That's what I meant. Yours in your combined class. And anyway, it was just a question. Numbers chapter 12, 13. Huh? 13 and 14. Well, we'll see what we get. All right, Numbers 13 and 14. One of the more curious chapters in this Exodus history. You think about Exodus. Now, we have kind of been taking the slow road, I guess, since we started Exodus back in, September or something. But you think about the book of Exodus, and children of Israel start the book as slaves in Egypt. God delivers them. The whole 10 plagues thing, which, by the way, I saw the movie Exodus. It wasn't quite as horrible as I thought it would be. Certainly wasn't nearly as bad as Noah. It was interesting. They did take a bit of a naturalistic explanation of the plagues, at least for some of them, and God being played by a petulant toddler, I'm not sure about. But, I get in the movie you need a focal point for Moses to be talking to somebody. So I guess, a petulant British toddler at that was what worked for them. So I guess toddler's not the right word. He was probably 7. Moses and God arguing after a while, was a bit old. I know Moses wasn't all on board at the beginning, but after a while it wasn't like this, who's going to save the people, God or Moses? It was really clearly God. But the children of Israel have seen this. They've seen the plagues. They've experienced some of them. They've seen the rest of them. They've certainly seen the impact of them. They have had the experience of walking out of the land, something that after 4 centuries, nobody thought was going to happen. They dreamed it would, but it's like one of those pipe dreams. When it comes true, what is that like? And I've tried to, that was one of the things I tried to do as I watched the movie, imagine that of what was that like when they just left? I mean, you've got people who for centuries lived in Egypt. It's all they knew, who dreamed of freedom, and it wasn't like a progressive freedom. It was just like, go. So it wasn't like, you have in our own country, you have, slavery, and we had a move toward freedom, and that was a progressive thing. There was a real conflict, which some people would say continues on, and I guess they might not be terribly wrong, but, you still have that progressive nature of freedom. This was just, in the middle of the night, go. And, 2 million people pick up and go. What would that have been like? So they had that very surreal experience. You get out a couple days later, and now they're at the Red Sea, and a wall of water in front of them, a wall of soldiers behind them, a desert and a mountain. They're hemmed in as hemmed in could be. And then God parts the Red Sea, and they walk through on dry land. With the Red Sea there to be seen around them had to have been crazy. I mean, this is not something that any of us have experienced. And so they have really experienced time and again the supernatural power of God to do what he said he would do for them, to facilitate and accomplish the things he said he wanted them to do. And so when you think about that, where we go then into Numbers chapter 13 and 14, doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, they've been walking around the desert for a little bit. They've established a national religion. The tabernacle has been built. They're becoming a nation. And this is the other part that we struggle to really comprehend. With a couple million people whose identity was Egyptian slaves, to reforming that identity into a nation, an independent nation of Israel, who served God and not Egypt, who was responsible for providing for themselves, was responsible for governing themselves insofar as that went, understanding that God ultimately was the king. There was a lot of changes they had to go through, and that was underway. They had a law, they had a lawgiver, they had a leader in Moses, they had a religious leader in Aaron, they had codified their religious law and practice in the sacrifices and things like that. This had already started to take shape. That identity that God was forging was being forged, wasn't complete yet. So all this kind of plays in, and then we get to Numbers chapter 13 as they come up to the promised land. Here was the land they'd been looking for. Here was the land of their forefathers. And here is their take on it. Numbers chapter 13. We'll begin in verse 1. We'll just read and we'll see how far we can get. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Send men to spy out the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the children of Israel. From each tribe of their fathers you shall send a man, everyone a leader among them." Sorry, I read 2.
So Moses did as the Lord commanded him. He sent out 12 men, all tribal leaders of Israel, from their camp in the wilderness of Paran.
And these were their names: the tribes of Reuben, Japhua, and the son of Japhua. From the tribe of Judah, Caleb, the son of Jephunneh.
From the tribe of Issachar, Igal, the son of Joseph.
From the tribe of Benjamin, Palti, the son of Raphu.
Zebulun, Gadiel, son of Zodi.
Of the tribe of Joseph, namely the tribe of Manasseh, Gideon, the son of Suzi. From the tribe of Asher, Sethur, the son of Michael.
From the tribe of Naphtali, Nabi, the son of Vashti.
Of the son of Gad, Gul, the son of Maki.
All right, how many of those people do you know? So you know at least one of them. You see Hoshea there. So you see listed there Hoshea, the son of Nun. We also know him as Joshua, right, son of Nun. So you get Joshua, same guy. It's a similar but different but same name. And then you also have somebody who you might remember by reputation if you've been in and around church for a little bit, a guy named Caleb, also one of the spies. And so we get them listed here. So we get these 12 spies. Now, 2 things to note. One, it's not listed here, and I thought it was. The children of Israel are at the city called Kadesh Barnea. Kadesh Barnea is the southern entrance into the land of Canaan. So as you go the trade route that's closer to the Mediterranean, it's that southern area there. It's kind of the southern access point. That's where they are at Kadesh Barnea. And so whose idea was it to send in the spies? God's. This is going to become important, I think, later on. God said, look, get representatives of each of the tribes. Send them into the land. Let them see what I have for you. Kind of stoke the imagination of, so you have a real good visual picture of what it is I have for you, what it is you've been dreaming about, and what it is I've promised, and what it is I'm giving to you. Go ahead and take a look. Kick the tires a little bit. Kind of an idea. So then we get verse 16. These are the names of the men who Moses sent to spy out the land, and Moses called Hoshea, the son of Nun, Joshua.
Moses gave the men these instructions as they sent them out to explore the land. Go north through Negev into hill country.
Yep.
And we see the land that is, and the people that dwell therein, and they be strong, or weak, few, or many.
What the land is that they dwell in,
So he says, look, be of good courage. Let us know what's there. We want to know what's there. We want to know if it's good. We want to know what the people are like, what the city's like, what can we expect as we move in. But, ultimately, be of good courage. That was the part of the instructions they, I think, forgot. Yeah. I find the things that God repeats the most are the things that we get the least, which is why he repeats them the most.
They went up and spied out the land from the wilderness of Zin as far as Rehob, near the entrance of Haman.
They ascended toward the south and came unto Hebron, where Stephen, Sheshai, and Talmai, the children of Anak, were. Now Hebron was built 7 years before Zon in Egypt.
All right. Now, the descendants of Anak in Hebron, or Hebron, either way is appropriate. Very important people. Do you know, right off the top of your head, the children of Anak, who they were? They were the Philistines. They were settled in the area of Hebron, which is along the south and eastern side of Israel. The Philistines had set up camp there. These guys were going to become a problem, and I think that's why we get them isolated or spotlighted there for a second. Then they came to the valley of Eshcol, and there cut down a branch with one cluster of grapes. They carried it between two of them on a pole. They also brought some of the pomegranates and figs. Now, I can't imagine, you ever gone to the supermarket and picked up a cluster of grapes? You ever needed help? Okay. So I'm not real sure what cluster means here. This is like, we ripped down an entire grapevine. I've heard some people say, oh, look at the grapes for the size of watermelons. I just don't see that in horticultural history. Just me, but maybe there are some variety that are. No doubt these are a lot of grapes and, good-sized, juicy grapes, but I think they just took a bunch of them. That's why it took 2 people, just me. Price per pound was good, free. Yeah, 24.
That place was called the Valley of Eshcol, which means cluster, because of the cluster of grapes the Israelite men cut there.
And they returned from searching the land after 40 days.
And they went and came to Moses and Aaron, and to all the congregation of the children of Israel, unto the wilderness of the Paran to Kadesh, and brought back word unto them, unto all the congregation, and showed them the fruit of the land.
And they told him and said, we went to the land where you sent us, and it truly flows with milk and honey, and this is the fruit.
Nevertheless, the people who saw the land saw that the cities are fortified and very large. They saw the descendants of Anak did.
That's kind of, I think, how the report probably came across. They went from, manly men to girly men in a heartbeat.
The Amalekites dwell in the land of the south, and the Hittites and the Jebusites and the Amorites dwell in the mountains, and the Canaanites dwell by the sea and by the coast of Jordan.
So you get this great report. It's awesome, but the people are awful. There are like a lot of nations there. They're big and they're fortified and they're armed and they have their own territories. And it's just, it's a whole different world there, and I'm not so sure. Then Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said to them, let us go up at once and take possession, for we are able to overcome it. So Caleb was a manly man. God said, this is our place. This is our place. Let's go get it.
But the other men who had explored the land with him disagreed. We can't go up against them. They are stronger than we are.
Now, is that wrong? Were the other people stronger than the children of Israel? Yeah, absolutely. Not inaccurate. Because the other nations were actual nations. The children of Israel was like a baby nation. They may have been a lot of people, but, they knew how to swing a hoe, and they knew how to step on clay and make bricks and lug stuff up and down pyramids. But when it came to warfare, their experience was a little short. So, their assessment here, though cowardly, was not inaccurate. Understand that as we go in. But who was actually going to deliver the land of Canaan to the people of Israel? God. Okay, so he was the one. And does God have a little bit of experience at nation building, fighting, and all those kinds of things? Yeah, kind of. he could uncreate things. So he wasn't worried about it. But the fear, we tend to belittle the children of Israel. Their fear was not unfounded, but it was very humano-focused, shall we say. They were looking at what we could do, not what God can do. So their focus was off.
And they brought up an evil report of the land which they had searched unto the children of Israel, saying, the land, through which we have gone to search it, is a land that eateth up the inhabitants thereof, and all the people that we saw in it are men of great stature.
And there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, which come of the giants, and we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, so we were very sorry.
All right, so we get the sons of Anak keep reappearing here. Who's the most famous son of Anak that you know? Goliath, right. Now, was Goliath a big dude? Yeah, when you go 9'6", you're big by every standard. Hello, you've got the grapes of Eshcol. We just talked about those. So we get this recurring. Look, we saw honestly, if you saw a family of people standing at 9 feet 6 inches, weighing 400 pounds, and just like bench pressing Volkswagen Beetles, would that have an impression on you? Yeah, and not a good one. If you were like, we could fight them, we could take them, I'd be like, yeah, you go get them. My time has expired. I hear my peanut butter and jelly song. So that's actually not a bad alarm. I would keep that on. So we'll stop there. We're right at the end of the chapter, and we'll kind of pick up in chapter 14 next week as we find the flow, the overflow from this. What was God's take on their take on the land, and we'll see that as we go. But the main, I think, focus that we draw from this is what they missed is who's providing for us, who's doing the doing. Because in our own lives, are there giants that we face? In our own lives, are there hostilities that are deeply entrenched that we face? And the answer is yes. And within our own power, can we overcome them? And the honest answer is no. And that's not cowardly to say, no, I can't overcome them. It is cowardly if we stop there because we can't, if God said to go forward. We need to get our eyes sometimes off of ourselves and back onto God when he says go and do, that he's the one who's doing the doing. We just have to go through the motions. And so the question of where is our focus, or on whom is our focus, becomes very critical. Do we see God who is bigger than our problems, or do we see our problems? And that's the question I'll leave you with. Let me pray, and we'll jump. Father, we love you. We thank you for this chapter, Lord, though it is a relatively dark day in Israel's history, who has just seen you do some really amazing stuff, to then turn around, look at the land and say, we can't go there because we're not able. Lord, you knew they weren't able. You were the doing it. You were the one who was going to do it. And the same is true in our lives. Father, so often you call us to do things. We look at the world around us and we give up because we can't handle it. And we can't. And we're not meant to. Help us to see that you bring us sometimes to difficult things because you mean to go through it for us. And help us to trust you, to look at you as bigger than our problems. Thank you in Jesus' good name. Amen.